Pokemon Nuzlocks are a journey that has attracted millions of people over the years to attempt to complete with varying degrees of success. But along that journey are certain stages that players pass through as they gain more experience traveling through whatever Nuzlocke it is they are doing. Stage 1 is fairly straightforward. A lot of players may have never even heard of what a Nuzlocke even is. So the whole concept of a Nuzlocke is completely alien to them. But this stage is for the players who are about to discover what this entire community of Pokemon players is all about. And for some, this is as far in the journey as they get, as the concept just doesn't sound fun to them, they're not hooked by the idea of it, and they don't want their Pokemon to die. But for others, this is where the addiction begins. Stage 2 is the part of the journey where you start consuming Nuzlocking content. You might have watched a few of the main big iconic Nuzlocke videos in the past, and then probably stumbled into all the reaction videos, the monotype challenge videos, and the difficulty ROM hack videos. I found myself watching a lot of Nuzlocke content before ever starting my own Nuzlocke myself, and I feel like that is a similar story for a lot of people who have tread this path before. Nuzlocke Newbies is the stage in which you, the player, start your very first Nuzlocke. This is another stage that forks off into different outcomes. A lot of players may start a Nuzlocke and never finish it, or just decide it's not for them and continue playing the game normally. And that is honestly completely okay. Not everybody needs to add arbitrary rules to a children's game to enjoy playing through it more. On the other side of the fork, however, is again where the Nuzlocke bug really takes hold. The challenge of navigating your way through the game, identifying the challenging battles and strategizing what you're going to do draws you in and gets you absolutely hooked. But then comes stage 4, the first death. The first death decides whether a Nuzlocker wants to continue on this path or walk away from it for good. Having to nickname your Pokemon means you form an even stronger attachment with this virtual creature, and not being able to use it anymore or even having to release it can be really difficult. Even more so if you're playing on hardware where you can't speed up or cheat in rare candies to level up your Pokemon faster. For most people, the hardest hitting first loss would be their starter, and would make you want to either reset the run and try and go through again without losing them, or say that death just doesn't count. I mean, it's your run, you make the rules. Or you're just somebody who plays it out and hopes that you don't lose any more Pokemon that you're growing attached to. Stage 5 is where you just start to lock in. That first death sucked, and you want to make sure that you don't lose any other team members like that ever again. Does this mean you will be successful at it? Not necessarily, but you can try your best. A lot of players will start researching the fights that are ahead of them to plan their team out better and know how they want to actually take on certain boss fights. They might even go so far as to use a damage calculator for the first time to really make sure their plans for future fights are foolproof. Or they continue to just go into every fight blind and hope for the best, but they're slightly less sad about each Pokemon death as long as it gets them through the fight. Now, stage 6, I believe, comes a little bit later on. You might have whited out a few times and had to reset your runs. You might be on attempt 4 or 5 of a game, or maybe even attempt counts higher than that. But you're finally at the champion battle. Victory is close, and your plan feels perfect. You manage to take out the champion's final Pokemon, and you win your first ever Nuzlocke. That feeling of victory is what every Nuzlocker out there is currently chasing, and you've just got your first ever taste of it. If the Nuzlocke bug somehow hasn't got you yet, this is the point where you become fully addicted to that feeling. Saying that though, this is the point where the journey ends for many players. They've completed the challenge they set out to achieve, and they move on to other things or other playthroughs of Pokemon, and that's okay. But for many, this is just the beginning, and the next couple of stages will really show that. I'd personally call stage 7 the Nuzlocke Pros stage. At this point in your journey, you've completed a good couple of Nuzlockes. You understand the games you're playing, and you're getting used to the challenges you can run into throughout the playthrough. You're also kind of learning what Pokemon are good, what Pokemon are bad, how to sacrifice a Pokemon safely, and how to try and get yourself out of difficult situations. I believe this is the point where a lot of players will start adding extra rules into their runs. If they were using items before, they could ban them completely. Some people might choose to start limiting themselves more with things like monotype runs, but this is the point at which Nuzlockers are starting to try and improve themselves and doing harder and harder challenges now that they've done it a couple of times. Now, that does make stage 8 slightly more difficult to place. A lot of these players have completed hardcore Nuzlocks of most of the vanilla Pokemon games, maybe even tried a few monotype challenges of their favorites as well. But here's where it gets difficult. Some of these players might be completely content just playing through officially released Pokemon games and not wanting to venture too much into the world of ROM hacks. However, some Nuzlockers want to take it even further and have started to Nuzlocke their way through some ROM hack games. Maybe not the most insane difficulty hacks just yet, but they have started their way through a couple of games that are definitely more difficult than the vanilla games they were playing. Stage 9 is what I would consider to be the Nuzlocke gods. These players consistently seek out difficulty ROMs to try and beat, to make the silly game of Pokemon even more difficult. They might not quite be at the point where they've beaten what is considered to be the pinnacle of difficulty ROM hacks yet, but they're getting to a point where they're learning what these kind of games are like, getting used to the challenges ahead, really planning on every single possibility in every single battle. I feel like at this point you start seeing the damage calculator screen more than you actually see the video game. The final stage is becoming a Pokemon master. These players have bested some of the most difficult ROM hacks in the world. Now, while these players do appear to have completed Nuzlocking, these Pokemon masters are always looking for a way to make Nuzlocks more challenging for themselves. And they're always waiting for a new challenge to sink their teeth into. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you leave it a like and also subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you had any ideas for what other stages could have been, leave them in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you think of the 10 stages of being a Nuzlocker.